Hey guys, Eclipse14 here, and welcome to my PS1 collection. Okay, so since I last made this recording, I've sold a few games off from this collection that just weren't of my interest anymore, but even then, it's still over twice as large as the next console's largest library, which is still a whopping 75 games. Yeah, it's pretty big. I'm actually going to try to go through these things in a single video, which means I won't be talking much, but that's fine considering I haven't had a console to really be able to play the games on since my PS2 broke down and I just never got another console to play it again. So I'm going to go through these things rather quickly with a few notes on some of them if need be, and let's go ahead and just get things started. Game number one is Thunder Force 5 Perfect System. With all the trades that happened over the last year, this is my only disc-only PlayStation game. The disc itself is about 35 to 40 bucks and a complete copy runs about 120. I actually did get a chance to get a complete copy of this game 2 months ago, but unfortunately it would mean having to have all my trade credit for what I was going for be towards the complete copy of the game, which unfortunately is a bummer, but regardless, I do have that game in mind and will still try to get this game complete when I can because it's weird just having the disc. Game number two is Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. I sold the first Spyro the Dragon off because it was a disc only, and we'll try to get that game complete so I can restore the trilogy for this thing. Other than that, I've completed this game, and that's really all I have to say about the game. Game number three is Spyro Year of the Dragon. This game I also completed with very relative ease, and definitely enjoyed my experience going for a full completion of this game. Other than that, not a whole lot to comment on otherwise. It's a good game though. Game number four is Crash Bandicoot. Boy, oh boy, was this tough to get 100%, but I did pull it off. I actually played the Insane Trilogy on the Switch and managed to get through the first game with a lot more ease than this one was. So it definitely has toned down the difficulty on the Switch, but regardless, it is still an excellent game, even if it is a tough one. Game number five is Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. Yes, I have the lenticular cover for this one. This game was actually pretty easy to deal with, and the last one of the Crash trilogy I needed to complete the first time. Other than that, I definitely enjoyed my time and did 100% it. Game number 6 is Crash Bandicoot Warped. Once again, I have the lenticular cover. This game I have 105% completed and was definitely enjoyable, although I did need a little bit of help trying to get the last few pieces together. It was still a really good game. Game number 7 is Ape Escape. This one I didn't play too much, only for a few minutes, and that was about it. I like the fact that it used the DualShock analog sticks as commands, but other than that, that's about it, unfortunately. Game number 8 is Jekio's Shooting King. This game I also played for a few minutes, and that was about it. All I remember from it is that's a quirky little top-down shoot-'em-up, and that's about it. This game's basically been a placeholder for a while. Game number 9 is Dynasty Warriors. Now, I'm familiar with the series in general, but this is a lot different compared to the later entries in the series, and the fact that it plays more like Soul Calibur than anything else. This game I only played for a few minutes, and that was about it. It's just a fighting game. I'd go through it pretty quickly anyway. Game number 10 is Beyond the Beyond, which is my first big jewel case entry in this instance. There's the manual right there, and the disc right there. A complete copy of this game runs around $50 to $60, but I don't know if you want to consider paying that much for a game that's actually known to be a pretty cringeworthy RPG. I wouldn't say it's a bad game, but it's a very cringeworthy one, so take it what you will. Game number 11 is Heart of Darkness, which is a really neat little platformer that I enjoyed completing. There's the first disc right there, and the manual. The second disc is right there, and right there is some 3D glasses, which is exclusive to the very last scene of the game, which I personally thought was kind of a disappointment that it only existed for that. Other than that, this was actually a really good game, and I definitely recommend it, because it's a pretty nice platformer. Game number 12 is Soul Blade. And speaking of Soul Calibur series, this is the precursor to the series, because Soul Calibur is second in the series. Overall, a decent fighting game that I got through pretty quickly, and not much else to comment otherwise. Game number 13 is Xevious 3D/G+, which includes Xevious 3D, as well as the original Xevious, Super Xevious, and Xevious Arrangement. The ports all play pretty nicely for this game, and overall is quite enjoyable. A complete copy, however, is about $50 to $60 and is kind of tough to find in the wild, so good luck finding it. Game number 14 is Galarians. I'm going to go ahead and show the first disc right there in the manual, and right here is disc 2 and disc 3. This game was really interesting. I had a lot of fun actually playing it, and my only concern with the game is that it's actually pretty short going through all 3 discs. A complete copy of the game runs around $80 to $85 now, and in some instances I could see the game pushing up to $100. It really is an interesting experience and would be worth a shot just to see something cool. Game number 15 is Final Fantasy Origins. This game I didn't play too much because I had already played these 2 games in the past on the Game Boy Advance and the first game on the NES, and the only reason I really picked this game up was mostly because I owned all the other Final Fantasies on the PlayStation, and this was the last one I needed to get. Game number 16 is Final Fantasy Chronicles. These are 2 games I've already played previously on other systems, and that's really all I got to say about it. But one thing about this game I do have is that it's my first entry here that has its own strategy guide, the Brady Game Strategy Guide that has the reversible Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger entries. It is in excellent shape with the spine being as it is. For a $30 game, it's kind of weird how the guide actually costs more than the game itself. I'm seeing the guide go for around 40 to 50 bucks. So yeah, it is pretty costly, and I'm glad to have the complete set here. Game number 17 is Final Fantasy Anthology. This was how I got introduced to Final Fantasy 5 and 6. Although I know in Europe it's actually released as 4 and 5, and 6 got its own separate release with a demo of Final Fantasy X. My copy owns the soundtrack, which is exclusive to the Black Label version, and even then you don't see it too often. I also have the strategy guide for this thing, which is very big. Woo boy! Even for something this large, the spine's in very good shape. Both the game and the guide are about 35 bucks each, so once again, it is nice to have a complete set as clean as it is. So I'm happy. Game number 18 is Final Fantasy VII. No surprise here. Disc 1 in the manual, and right back here is Disc 2 and Disc 3. I have completed this game. This game is not the misprint copy, which is unfortunate, but I have seen it and may get it at some point later on. Regardless, I did enjoy this game from start to finish, even if it took me a very long time from when I got it to when I finished it the first time to beat it. Game number 19 is Final Fantasy VIII, which has Disc 1, the manual is in good shape, there's Disc 2 right there. On this end, there's Disc 4, and the Brady Games mini walkthrough with Disc 3 right behind it. Never actually finished this game, although I've been wanting to for a while. This one I also own a strategy guide for, and this is particularly the tattoo version. It's in good shape apart from a little tear way up there, and it actually does include the tattoos as you can see right there, which is personally pretty awesome. So a full complete set, and it also looks pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with that result, and hopefully I'll be able to finish it someday. Game number 20 is Final Fantasy Tactics. Yeah, Final Fantasy IX was dropped. That's because the disc conditions were basically unsalvageable, so I sold it off. Anyway, I have completed this game more than once, and I'm actually considering playing this game for the channel a little later on down the road. Definitely one of those that has my interest entirely. And once again, another strategy guide. This time the primer version, which looks pretty good overall. A few nicks here and there, but other than that, looks pretty good for a guide that's about $30 to $40. The game itself's about 30, so it's another case of the guide being more expensive than the game. Yeah, I always find that pretty weird, but it's nice to have the complete set. Game number 21 is Chocobo's Dungeon 2. I always found it weird that we got the second game, but never got the first game at all. It's only available in Japan. Anyway, complete little set, which is pretty awesome. Only played it for a few minutes, and that's about it. Complete copy of this game seems to be running around $80 to $85 at this point, and I think it was over 100 bucks at one point a couple months ago. So it has gotten pretty high, and I'm glad I picked it up before it got that high. Game number 22 is Bushido Blade, which is a game I completed pretty quickly, considering that the mechanic is, it's a fighting game where one quick blow means a very quick end to the match. It's a complete set, and that's really all I got to comment on it. It's a fighting game that I just blew by very, very easily. Game number 23 is Front Mission 3. This game I only played for a couple of minutes, and that was about it. I like the idea of the whole mech RPG style, but something just didn't click and I didn't play it since. This game used to be one of the cheapest Squaresoft games on the PlayStation. Nowadays it's running about $60 to $65, so it has climbed up a good chunk, and I'm kind of surprised that that ended up becoming to be. Game number 24 is Saga Frontier 2. This game I only played through a couple scenarios and that was it because I got stuck somewhere and just didn't return. I want to get the first Saga Frontier because it just feels weird owning the second and not the first. I know they're just like different stories and whatnot, but it just feels weird. Regardless, I'm hoping to be able to play through this game a little more. Game number 25 is Legend of Mana. This game I've also only played for a couple minutes, primarily because this particular copy's disc is very clean and I try not to damage it too much if I'm trying to play it. Complete copies of this game, they've been going all over the place over the last couple months. I've been seeing them around 50 to 60, sometimes 90 to 95 to 100, and now I'm starting to see them running around 50 to 60 again. So it is really unstable in terms of price, but it's still fairly up there. I should also note that I do own the strategy guide for this one, which is a very clean looking copy. Just a little bit of wear on the bottom and not much else otherwise. The guide itself is about as much as the game is now, about $40 to $50. So a complete set of about 100 is pretty reasonable for this whole thing if I were to retail it. So yeah, very nice stuff indeed. Game number 26 is Threads of Fate. Another game where I only played for a couple minutes and that was about it. Once again, actually due to the disc being pretty clean. Complete copy of this game has been running around $60 to $70, might push 75 in some instances, and unfortunately that's all I got to comment on this one. It's actually my last Squaresoft PlayStation game I've picked up. Game number 27 is Air Guys. Pretty sure the reason anybody even knows this game exists is because several characters from Final Fantasy VII are in it. I played one run of the game, and that's really all I got to comment on it, because that was the only time I really played the game. Complete copy of the game is generally around $50 to $60, might push a little more than that, but overall, it's an okay fighting game with a pretty decent concept. Game number 28 is Xenogears. This is my first online order for the PlayStation, which is my 10th overall, but the only online order to have been screwed up. In this case, my copy is missing the manual, and I ended up paying $10 more than the specific entry I was looking at online when I showed the dude to order it. Regardless, I did complete the game. A complete copy, if I had the manual, would be about $120 to $125 now. It's definitely been really up there over the last couple of years, but I'm glad to say I was able to play the game. I just kind of wish I had a complete copy, so I am certainly looking for one just to get a manual for it. Game number 29 is Brave Fencer Musashi. This is also an online order and my 11th overall. Regardless, this game is actually a very personal favorite of mine, definitely one of my favorite games on the PlayStation, and one that has grown on to me for years and years. Obviously got a complete set, including the Final Fantasy VIII Collector's CD, and a complete copy of this runs about $115 to $120. So it's definitely one of the higher end Squaresoft games, but it's still a very good one, and I definitely recommend it. Game number 30 is Breath of Fire 3. This was my first experience with the Breath of Fire series, and it was definitely an excellent one. I've completed this game twice, and very likely will play through it again in the near future. Complete copy of this game has increased a good chunk. It's now around $80 at this point, might push a little higher than that, but regardless, it's a really good role-playing game for the system, and I definitely recommend it. Game number 31 is Breath of Fire 4. This game I've completed once. Took me quite a few tries to get through it the first time, but boy was it worth the effort, because this was actually a really good game. For a while, Breath of Fire 3 and 4 were about the same price, but after 2018, this one seemed to gain more ground. Now I'm seeing it at very low end $100, regularly around $120 to $125, so it's definitely increased in price a good chunk over 3, but it's still a very good game regardless. Both of them are pretty awesome. Game number 32 is Mega Man 8. This one, unfortunately, I didn't play too much, only like the opening areas, and that's about it. It's a clean copy, and it's a relatively inexpensive game, but other than that, not too much to comment on it otherwise. Game number 33 is Mega Man X4. I played this a good chunk more than Mega Man 8, but I still never finished the game, which is unfortunate. Although one of the things that alienated me about this game was the fact that I played X5 first, and there's a couple additional moves that this one didn't have, and it just felt weird not having them. It's still a good game regardless. Game number 34 is Mega Man X5. Hey, speaking of X5, this one I actually did complete because it was my first entry into the Mega Man X series, as well as my only Mega Man X game for quite some time. It's been a while since I last played the game, though, so I don't really remember it too much, but I did remember having a lot of fun with it. Game number 35 is Mega Man X6. This game I got about halfway through and then just stopped for some reason. Don't know why, I just stopped before I could finish it. This game is actually worth a little more than X4 and X5, but that's not really saying much. Complete copies of this are generally still around 30 to 35 bucks, and that's about it. Game number 36 is Mega Man Legends. I'm familiar with this game via Mega Man 64 because a friend owned it and we goofed off on the game for a while, but in terms of actually playing the game, I never really got to play through this one very much. Complete copy of this game runs around $60 to $65, might push 70 to 75 in the right circumstances. Game number 37 is Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. This game has such a weird concept, and yet it's such an entertaining piece of work. I've completed this game, it's actually fairly quick to do so, but regardless of that, it's such a quirky and fun game that I actually recommend it just to give it a try. It's so fun. Game number 38 is Street Fighter EX2 Plus. This is another game where I put in maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and that's all I've had to play for it. Complete copy of this game runs around $60 to $65, and it's kind of maintained that price for a good chunk of time. Game number 39 is Darkstalkers 3. This is my third online order for the PlayStation and 12th overall. This particular copy has a torn back of the manual. Don't know why that came to me. I guess it's for the Capcom thing that was going on at the time. And as for the game itself, I put in a good chunk of time, but I never put in a serious attempt to finish the game. As for a complete copy, these things are generally around $80 to $85 at bare minimum. I'm starting to see them regularly around $100 now. So it is a costly game, but the Darkstalker series is a pretty good series of fighting games. Game number 40 is Rival Schools. Once again, an online order, which is my 13th overall. This one was mostly because I could never find a complete copy at all. It was always missing either one disc or the manual. Fortunately, I found one that was a complete set and ordered it a little over the norm, but regardless, I still got it, and it was a really good game that I completed. Complete copy of this, minimum's about $125 to $130. I'm regularly seeing them about $150 now. So it is a very costly game if you can find it complete. Game number 41 is Star Ocean: The Second Story. Another game I only played for a couple of minutes, and that was about it, despite actually having interest in the series, and I just don't know why I didn't connect. Disc 1 in the manual is right there, and right behind it's Disc 2. Complete copies of this game run around $50 to $55. I've seen 60s on some occasions as well, so it's definitely up there. Game number 42 is Grandia. This game I've actually had some interest in playing, but this particular copy I've only played for maybe 15 minutes because the discs are actually in decent shape. There's Disc 1 in the manual, and right behind that is Disc 2. Complete copies are generally around $60 to $65. Occasionally may hit 70 at times. But yeah, I am interested in actually playing this game and might do so sometime this year. Game number 43 is The Legend of Dragoon. My copy has some issues, that's for certain. There's Disc 1, there's the manual, which has a torn front cover. There's Disc 2 right behind it. Go right behind that, and there's Disc 3 and Disc 4. Complete copies of this game are running around $50 to $60, and unfortunately, I really wanted to put some time into this game, but I got stuck somewhere and just never came back to it. Game number 44 is The Legend of Legaia. My copy has some serious issues. I've wanted to play this game for a good chunk of time. There's the manual, by the way. The disc, however, it got stuck on the first couple CG scenes, so it probably needs a resurface, or I just need to replace the disc. So, complete copy of this is generally around $75 to $80, and that's a pretty good sign. I should also note that this one also has a strategy guide in my hands. This one in particular, it's about 40 bucks, and a really good condition one's about 50. Mine has some front issues, but other than that, it's a really good set overall. So I'm happy with the setup. I just wish my copy looked a lot better and was actually playable. Game number 45 is Wild Arms. This is another game that I had interest in the series and only put in a good chunk of time, but never truly finished it. There's the manual right there, and right there is the disc. Complete copies of this game are generally about $50 to $55 and may push 60 on occasion, and this is another game that I'm pretty interested in trying to try again. Game number 46 is Metal Gear Solid. Whoever had this copy before me should have just kept it under shrink wrap. This copy here, there's Disc 1, the manual, and Disc 2 is right there. Both discs don't even have so much as a speck of dust on them, let alone a scratch or anything else. It looks that clean, and I've never actually played this copy of the game, primarily because of its condition reasons. I'm not ignorant of the game, though. I own Twin Snakes on GameCube and played it on that sense. I should also note that I own this strategy guide for it, which is the Unauthorized Game Secrets. There's a little nick right there on the bottom, but other than that, it looks pretty good. So it's a very, very clean set overall, and I'm glad to have it. But yeah, I just wish the dude that had this last just kept it under shrink wrap. Game number 47 is Vandal Hearts. Another game I only put in like 2 scenarios and that was it because I just stopped playing it. There's the manual right there, and there's the disc right there. A complete copy of this game runs about $50 to $60, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself for not actually putting myself through to try to complete this game, especially considering that it played like Final Fantasy Tactics, and I very thoroughly enjoyed that game. Game number 48 is Azure Dreams. This game I had a lot of fun with, but I never did finish it because it takes a long time to actually get through the process of getting through the game. So, yeah, never did finish it. It's a little tough, but still a very awesome little roguelike RPG. Complete copies, however, are about $80 to $90 and may push 100 in some instances, and is overall a pretty rare game. This is actually the only copy I've ever seen in the wild. Game number 49 is Silent Hill. Another game I didn't play too much of because the condition of the disc actually looks pretty good. I'm amazed at how much the Silent Hill games have become in terms of price, especially on the PlayStation systems. It's absolutely insane. If I knew it was going to be that high, I'd try to have picked up most of the series, but unfortunately only this one came to be. I should also note that I own the strategy guide for this one as well, which is in excellent shape for a Prima guide. I've seen the guide itself be at low in the 40s, and I've seen some go for as high as $80 for really clean ones. Not bad for a game that's also especially expensive, where a complete copy is solidly around $150, and regularly I've seen it around $175 to $180. It's very, very expensive, and I'm surprised the series is so explosively expensive as it is now. Game number 50 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Yes, a Black Label copy that actually looks pretty good. I've played a good chunk of it, but unfortunately I never finished it. Although, it's definitely one of the better Castlevania games for what I've played of it. Complete copies of the Black Label version run around $130 to $140. Definitely very, very high compared to what I've seen it a couple years ago. The Greatest Hits version's a little bit lower, somewhere around $115 to $120, but still, it's pretty pricey for a game that's pretty much probably the best of the Castlevania series. I legit ran out of the natural light, so I gotta use my top light for this one. Anyway, game number 51 is Castlevania Chronicles. This game was also an online order, so it's my 14th overall, and the game itself is actually an arcade port of the first Castlevania. It looks pretty good, but it's also a tough game in its own right, so expect some brutality playing this one. After I ordered this game, it suddenly shot up in price, so I did pick it up at the correct opportunity, and complete copies of this game now run around $160 to $180, and I think in the summer of 2021 it was over $200 as well. So it's definitely a very pricey game and also a very rare game. To this day, I have never seen a copy for sale in the wild, so have fun getting this one. Game number 52 is Suikoden. This game is awesome, one of my personal favorites, and I very thoroughly enjoyed playing through this the very first time. Got the complete copy right here, there's the manual and there's the disc. Complete copies of this game run around $75 to $80. I think in the summer it was around $100, so it's definitely jumped up a good chunk, but still one of my personal favorite games, and I'm really glad to have it. I'm actually considering playing this game for the channel sometime this year, and will very likely do so sometime in the middle of the year. Game number 53 is Suikoden 2. Ah yes, one of the most desired games on the PlayStation. This was an online order for me, my 15th overall, and my most expensive online order to date, costing me $120 for this game, and a soundtrack that was connected to Suikoden 2, so that was actually pretty awesome. My copy's in decent shape, although I think I need to resurface my disc, because I had some glitching in the major battles when I was going through the game to complete it. Complete copies of this game now run around $350, which is pretty costly. I know in the summer it was around $400, but this game has always been very costly, so $120 was actually about normal for when I got it. Regardless, I'm really happy I got it, and will likely play this game sometime in the future for the channel once I complete the first game. Game number 54 is Dragon Seeds. Oh boy, this is a weird game. I can't really explain how this thing would work. It's kind of like an action game of sorts with a Pokemon-ish feel to it. Yeah, it's a very difficult game to explain, but it's a really cool game overall, and I do enjoy it. But it's also a really rare game because this is the only one I've ever seen in the wild, and it's not often I've seen it really come up online either. Complete copies of this I'm seeing about $60 to $70. I know at some points it was around 35 to 40 as well, so it really has been fluctuating pretty randomly, although I think it's stabilized as a result of everything that's gone up over the past couple years. Game number 55 is Diablo. Only played this one for a couple minutes just to make sure it worked, but it seemed pretty interesting overall, especially for a port of a PC game. Complete copies of this are pretty uncommon. They're around $80 to $90 as well, and 100 wouldn't be too much of a surprise either. It actually looks and plays pretty well, so I'm pretty happy to have it, especially considering that I had been searching for it for a good chunk of time before I finally picked it up. Game number 56 is R-Types, which is a port of R-Type 1 and R-Type 2 combined into the same disc. I completed R-Type 1 with this game. It was my first introduction to it, but I never did start R-Type 2 because by the time I finished the first one, my PS2 was no longer working. So that's a bummer. Complete copy of this game runs around $40 to $50. Pretty cheap overall compared to the other R-Type game that I was actually waiting for when this showed up. Game number 57 is R-Type Delta. Once again, in online order, my 16th overall. I got stupid lucky with this copy though. Because of the crease up front in the manual, it probably lowered it a good chunk, but I still got it for 37 bucks at a time when a complete copy was rare even online, and regularly went for over 120 if it did show up. Nowadays, a complete copy is borderline $250 and probably even worse than that in some instances. So it's definitely a very expensive game and also a very rare one. I have still never seen a copy of this game in the wild. But even with that high cost and rarity, it is actually my favorite R-Type game because it plays very, very well, and I like the new ships that come with it other than the R9. Game number 58 is Clock Tower. I've heard this isn't really that great of a horror game, but I've also known this game was also very expensive for a good chunk of time. Same with Clock Tower 2. I actually had the opportunity to get both games, but I lost the opportunity to get the second one as I was getting the first game, and I've never seen a copy of either game since. Kinda sucks considering that the second game is absolutely insane in value now, whereas Clock Tower is still pretty high, but not as bad as the second game is. Complete copies of this game are around $180 to $200, and yeah, from what I've heard, it's not really impressive. Only played it for a couple minutes in my case, and that was about it. Game number 59 is Shadow Tower. I didn't even know this game existed until like a couple weeks before I got this copy, and since then I hadn't seen the game since. It's a very difficult first-person RPG. It's kicked my butt quite a few times in the few times I've actually tried to play the game, and yeah, it's just a game that I never really heard of until I found it. So a complete copy of this nowadays, I'm seeing around $250 to $260. Might push into the $275 mark in some instances. So yeah, it's definitely a very expensive one, especially probably now it's a little more known for being pretty tough and pretty similar to Dark Souls. Game number 60 is Tomba. This game is a pretty neat little action game with a couple other elements mixed in that, unfortunately, I only played a little bit of it and never really had an attempt to finish it. Complete copies of this game run about $140 to $150, and I've seen some go for as high as $160 at times. It's always been a pretty pricey game because I've seen it regularly over $100 for quite a few years now. So, it's a pretty pricey game, but it's a very quirky and neat one at that. Game number 61 is Tomba 2. This is my last single disc jewel case game, so we're done with this now. This game I'm much more familiar with than the first game. It's a 2.5D landscape, which is a 3D background and a 2D playstyle, and I got well over halfway through the game, but ultimately never finished it. I just stopped and that was about it. Complete copies of the game are a little under the first game, but are still pretty high at about $120 to $125. It's a very neat little action game, much like the first game, and if you can find it, it might be worth a try. Game number 62 is Tales of Destiny. To date, this is my most recent PlayStation game that I've picked up, and I haven't actually touched this copy because I got it at a time when I still didn't have a PS1 or PS2 that worked yet. Regardless, I did pick the game up primarily because I knew the game was going to get a lot more expensive than it already was, and I managed to find a pretty good copy overall. Complete copies now are running around $175 to $180. They were well over $200 during the summer of last year, and yeah, I'm just really excited to try to play this game once I finally get a system that works, because this has been on my mind for a while, and now that I have the game, it's well within reach. Game number 63 is Thousand Arms. This is a game I completed and very much enjoyed every single moment of it, because it just was pretty cool in my eyes. There's the first disc in the manual, and right behind it is disc 2. I don't have the card or the paper for the memory card stickers, unfortunately, but I have 3 of the memory card stickers attached to this case for some reason. Always found that to be pretty weird, but yeah. Complete copies of this game run about $140 to $150. I think if the card and the stickers are there, it'd probably push up to the $175 mark at some instances. But hopefully I can get those little extras because that would personally be pretty cool. But regardless, this is a very enjoyable game, and I did love every moment of this thing. Game number 64 is Persona. Oh boy, this little sucker manages to be the most expensive game in my entire collection that's complete. In other words, it has everything. Got the manual right here, which is a little wavy, but still in decent shape. And the disc is in very good condition. I've only played it for about 15 minutes just to make sure it worked. Plus, I'm kind of nervous because there's not even a scratch on the disc. Complete copies of this game, when I got it, were about $120 to $125. Since then, they've accelerated rapidly to the bare minimum I've seen was $350 over the last couple years, and the average is around $400. It's absolutely insane that this game got so expensive as it has, so I'm really glad I picked it up. Although I am disappointed I never got Persona 2, because now, unfortunately, it's around that price as well. Hopefully I'll get it someday, when it's not that bad. Game number 65 is Alundra. Boy oh boy, it took many attempts for me to try to make a serious run through this game, and when I finally did, it was a very harrowing experience. There's the manual, and there's the disc. I should also note, I'm going to go ahead and drop this right here, because this particular copy of the game actually has the map, which I put inside the manual mostly for safety reasons. And that's just because the bottom of this thing could end up nicking it over time. I'll go ahead and put it back off camera. So anyway, complete copies of this game run around $150 to $160, although I'm not certain if that includes the map, because they don't show up very often online, and I'm pretty sure they end up commanding a higher premium if it does have the map. Regardless, this is an excellent game and was very well worth the adventure. Definitely one of my favorites on the PlayStation. Game number 66 is Alundra 2. This case is cracked to hell and back. Holy crap. Anyway, there's the manual and another crack, and there's the disc. I have tried to finish this game quite a number of times and have just never been able to do it. I get a good amount of progress, and then some outside forces come up, and then I just forget I'm trying to finish the game. This is one I've definitely been wanting to finish for quite some time, and hopefully I'll be able to do it sometime this year. Game number 67 is Vanguard Bandits. Alongside Xenogears, this is the only other case PlayStation game that is incomplete in my case. Right here, we've got the game disc and the manual, and an empty hole. This empty hole is supposed to be a Lunar 2 demo disc, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find one anytime soon. The game itself is actually really fun. I've completed it through all 3 endings, and it's pretty much a combination of Xenogears and Final Fantasy Tactics, which I thought was personally pretty cool. Complete copies of this game run around $150 to $160, so it is a bit costly, but it is a really neat experience, and playing through it for multiple endings was definitely an enjoyable thing. Game number 68 is Elemental Gearbolt. This game is also in online order, my 17th overall, and this case is actually pretty exceptional because this game is notoriously difficult to find in the wild, and I've only seen 2 copies since I got it online. It just looks so amazing with all the vibrant rainbow coloring going on, and the game itself is actually really neat. Story was absolutely crazy, and man, this was worth getting. Complete copies nowadays are about $175 to $180. May push $200 in some instances if they're really good looking, but boy oh boy is this such an experience. It's my only light gun game in the entire PlayStation collection, and if you can find this game, it's worth at least playing a little bit because it's just a really weird experience. Game number 69 is Lunar Silver Star Story Complete. Oh yeah, get into the big boxes this time. It's amazing how I managed to find this game for just $5 at a flea market, but that's how things go, and that was how my luck was many years ago. Looks very good overall, and if you don't mind me, I'm gonna open it up. I should note I've stripped most of this case, and there's a good reason for this one. The case, even though it looks pretty good, the outside teeth are broken. So right inside the center there is disc 2, and right over here is the making of Lunar. And likewise, cracked teeth there means the discs that are supposed to be there are pretty much unsalvageable, and they keep dropping every time I open the case. This here is actually my disc 1 copy that's supposed to be on the first case, and it looks pretty good overall. And subsequently, I also have the Lunar soundtrack, which is a standard disc instead of a standard PlayStation style black like it should be. Obviously down here is the Lunar Silver Star Story leather booklet, which is in very good shape. Very good shape overall without any issue whatsoever. And I also have sealed the cloth map. I have seen what an open cloth map looks like, so I'm not completely out of the blue here, but I prefer to keep mine sealed because why not? So yeah, I have the full complete set right here. Complete copies of this game run around $125 to $135, and overall I'm pretty happy with the collection. Now I just need to get Lunar 2. I've always had the opportunity to get that game on numerous occasions, and I just never did. Hopefully it'll be something I grab sometime this year. A little update clip with Lunar. I completely forgot. I also have the strategy guide for this game, and this is my 9th and final for the PlayStation. I had it on my bed and completely forgot about it. Yeah, I just wanted to show that because it was the last one I had, and I just completely bypassed it. Alright, moving on. Game number 70 is the Arc-the-Lad Collection. Holy crap, this thing is a big boy. Yeah, this thing is humongous. If you don't mind me, let's open this sucker up. Oh boy, we got a lot to cover. So here's the case itself, which has 6 discs instead of the 5 mentioned. There's the first Arc-the-Lad. On this side, you've got Arc-the-Lad 2 and Arc Arena, which fell out of its slot for some reason. This one has the making of Arc-the-Lad in the back, and right in between here is Arc-the-Lad 3 discs 1 and 2. So 6 discs total, which is pretty big. Got myself the Arc-the-Lad collection right here, the manual, which is a little more worn than the Lunar one, but still pretty good overall. Covers all the games, and I think that's pretty awesome. And finally, we have the Arc-the-Lad collection of Maki Box, which, if I open it right here, includes all this. There are some thumb covers up top, a memory card holder right there, and Arc-the-Lad 3 figurine standees. A nice full set that looks very, very nice overall. Complete copies of this game in its entirety run around $150 to $160, which is probably expected because this thing is thick. Oh man, it's amazing that I managed to get this set up. I've only played a little of the Arc-the-Lad collection, and hey, it's alright. I just wish I could play it a little more, and I probably should. Game number 71 starts my long boxes with A-Train. Now, I'm not too fond of simulation games, and this is exactly what A-Train is, but I know this game is actually a bit uncommon when it comes to long box games. Although, to be fair, I personally loathe these boxes. They're so terrible. The manual's right there, and you got your disc right there, but Jesus, this box is so ugly. I really wish it was one of the better looking ones that are coming up, but this is how it is, unfortunately. Game number 72 is Tekken. Now this is what I'm much more familiar with because I'm familiar with these with the later Sega systems. I have completed this game and did it fairly quickly too, considering it is a fighting game, but I very much enjoyed it. A complete copy of the long box version of Tekken is about $40 to $45 and isn't too common, but it's definitely worth a little more than some of the other Tekken games in the series. So it's definitely an enjoyable game, especially since it starts a pretty well-known fighting series. Game number 73 is XCOM UFO Defense. Unfortunately, I'm not too familiar with this game because I only put it in for about 15 minutes, and the only thing I'm familiar with the XCOM series in general with is the permadeath. Hey, Styrofoam! Disc itself looks pretty good, and so does the manual. Complete copies of this game run about $50 to $60, and not too common otherwise, so I'm glad to say I have it. Game number 74 is a long box copy of Resident Evil. This copy sucks, unfortunately, and the main reason for that was when I got this game, the story went was some kid had it in his backpack and definitely didn't treat it right. At least I try to take care of my stuff. So yeah, opening this thing just kind of sucks. As you can see, the disc is falling out because the teeth are busted up there. And at least I got the manual, but some of the pages are loose, but fortunately everything is there, and the top's cracked as well. I'm surprised this thing didn't split apart. And it pretty much almost did right there. Complete copies of this game run around $120 to $140. This might be just $100 just because the condition is so rough. I'm kind of sad for this game, honestly, because it's not common to find a long box copy of the original game at all. And someone just definitely didn't treat it the way it should. At least I take care of my stuff. Game number 75 is Discworld. I'm not too familiar with the books because I just never read them. They never really came around, but I am familiar with the series, and that's the important part. The game's a point and click, so I never really got to play it too much because I just didn't know what to do. And there's a sticker on the manual as well as the box, but that's really the only issues here, apart from some residue in the middle. Complete copies of this game run around $80 to $90. I see them hitting 100 in some instances. And it's not too common to find this game, as well as Discworld 2, which is another game I'm actually looking for the collection. And at long last, my last PlayStation game, number 76, goes to a really rare long box game called Starblade Alpha. This game, once again, is an online order, so it's my 18th overall, and is the only one to come out of Canada. This is the only copy I have ever seen with my own eyes. It is really, really unusual, and I know nobody that even knows the game even existed. It's just that unusual. Finding a complete copy when I did was virtually unheard of, and I managed to pick it up for just 30 Canadian dollars. It took a really long time for at least some kind of demand to flatten up, and eventually it did in 2018 at about $150. Now I'm starting to see it push into $350 range and might go even worse over time. Fortunately, I have it complete, and I have completed this game. It's very easy to do so, but regardless, it is still an exceptionally rare game, and without a doubt, probably the rarest long box game on the PlayStation. It's that unheard of. So I'm really lucky to have picked it up for as cheap as I did at a time when it was very, very obscure, because this would be near impossible to pick up otherwise. So I'm really glad to have this one as part of my collection. And at last, my PlayStation Collection video is over. Holy fucking shit. To give you an idea on how long this took, it took over 7.5 hours to complete with all my errors and screw-ups and trying to do the number of takes I did. It was that long a collection. I knew it was going to be long, and this is probably going to be the longest video I make for the channel. Holy crap, I'm glad I'm done. So, with that said, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly move on to the PlayStation 2 and get things rolling. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this long marathon of a video. Hope you guys will watch my PlayStation 2 collection, which will not be anywhere near as long as this video is. And until then, I hope you guys enjoyed everything. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the next video.